Hi, everyone.
We're just about to kick this off. Just want to say welcome to everybody joining. We're just going to let the people trickle in the door, the virtual door of the Talkaoke bar. Now, in our brief, somebody said to us, this is a drinks session. This is like a informal drinks session. So we took the trouble of getting the drinks behind us, but it seems like nobody else got that memo. So you're gonna have to bear with us. It's not too late. If you want to come and we've got spare drinks here. So if you're anywhere near Poplar, we're 27 Aberfeldy Street, Poplar. It's not too late.
Just pop in.
You can pop in to Poplar. Just put the Zoom on your mobile. I've not got very many faces on camera now. This is an interactive session where we very much want you to join in. So turn on your cameras, please. Welcome Samir and Caspian and Teresa and Camilla and Luke. I want to see, we've got a flurry of faces now. So welcome everybody.
Oh, suddenly everyone's here.
Thanks for joining.
And I just want to see that Kane, you've got your virtual hand up, and we are 3 months into the lockdown. I really genuinely hope everybody knows where the virtual hand button is on Zoom. But if you don't, that's also fine. It's in the bottom of your screen. And if you go to participants, then you should have a raise your hand, press yes, press no button. So it is an interactive session. So we may, if you want to make a point, we may ask you to raise your virtual hand. Kane, do you actually have a point, or are you just like practicing the hand?
Can I go and get a drink?
You can. You must.
Please do, and you can tweet about it as well, because Kane is actually our Twitterologist today, and he's going to be we're going live on Facebook and on Twitter, so we're hopefully getting some comments in from there. But if you don't feel like saying a point on the live video, you're very welcome to put it into the chat, or put it into the Facebook live chat or the Twitter feed, whatever you want. But the main point of this, I'll say it again, it's about what you think. It's about sharing ideas. It's about generating new ideas together. So this is very much an interactive session. It comes off the back of last week's session, which is about skilling up in the virtual world. But this is about exchanging ideas, coming up with new ideas, and actually just really like having a bit more of an exciting, as it said in the brief, a kind of drinksy session. Although I noticed that no one's got a drink. If anyone's got a drink, please raise your drink. Oh, David has joined us with a drink. Fantastic. So that's one person. That's excellent. Anyway, so that's one side of it. Do people want to just practice just the raised hand function? Give me a raised hand, people. It doesn't mean I'm going to come to you, so don't worry. We've seen Kane do it. We've got one from Samir. I've got one from Caroline, one from Emily. So we're starting to see some of these raised hands come up. Because there's so many of you in the room, we've got a thumbs up from Louisa. That's kind of okay. But I might just take that as, yes, you're doing a great job. And from Samantha.
I'm just going to give you
so it's because there's so many of you in the room, it's much easier to see the virtual raised hand than the real raised hand, but you can also give the real raised hand a go. Or you could just possibly try just wading in there as well. So that's one thing. Another thing that we're talking about as well, if you can all just practice lowering your hand as well now.
Yeah, that's a very valuable skill.
So thank you, everybody. Just practice. Most people have lowered their hands as well. We're going to try something new here, because we're also experimenting digitally. And one of the things we're trying to do is we want to see if this polling works, but we don't want to just use the boring, dry polling of Zoom. So we've created our own way of polling, which is if you like it, you put a green background. If you don't like it, put a red background. I'm just going to actually
just show off and go for all of the colors.
So if you don't like it, put a green background. If you do like it, put a green background. If you don't like it, put a red background. If you're not sure, put a yellow background. We're going to try that later on if that comes up. So that's another thing, just to really mess with your brains basically, and trying to get some creative juices flowing for this session. So
Yeah. So
anything else we need to talk about?
So these backgrounds will be found in the chat. So you should see vote yes, that's your green card. So download that. There's a vote no card, and that's your red, or as we like our red pink, it's a pink card. And also there's a maybe card, which is yellow. So download them all, in just so they're very handy when we need to use them. If you go into your virtual background change, just upload these 3 images, these 3 backgrounds into there. So that way you won't be spending hundreds of minutes finding, looking for the right background. This is, like Mikey said, a massive experiment. So if this makes no sense whatsoever,
that's fine. It doesn't
fine.
It doesn't really make much sense to us either. So that's fine. But we hope to get some sense from, we've got a no from David and a not sure from Anna. So that's good. That's a good start. We hope to get some sense out of this, to through the chaos, through the uncertainty, get some new ideas. This is what this session is all about. It's about new ideas. So without further ado, that's the introduction. Welcome everybody. Hello Facebook people as well. We're monitoring the Facebook chat. So if you've got something to say too, please put it in the chat and we'll try and feed it into the main conversation. Let's get this thing going. That's 8 minutes of introduction. It's way too long. So let's just get on with this.
Very meaty introduction indeed.
Does anyone got anything they want to start off with? Camilla, you've got your hand up still.
It could be
Do you want to kick this off?
hand.
Are you kicking this off, Camilla? No. Maybe it's time then to, where is Kane? We've lost Kane.
Kane is
he's down the bottom there. Kane, do you want to kick this off with a bit of context? Help us out a little bit here.
Yeah, so this conversation, a bit like the previous Talkaoke, comes off the back of the last Raise session, which was a week ago, I believe, which focused on skilling up for virtual fundraising and events. So it was looking at different ways in which we can talk to and engage our donors and supporters during lockdown online. And so the aim of this, even if you didn't attend that event, is to pick up some of those conversations, to hear different ideas of how you are going about fundraising now, what you're having success with. Are we just going down the route that all fundraising is now is just a series of very well executed quizzes, online quizzes at events? Are people doing more interesting things?
So quiz skills have definitely got better.
I don't know. Yeah, that seemed to really stick with me. The sort of main takeaway was that there's, saying that, I've been, Streetwise Opera, shout out to them, did a really impressive quiz with Alan Cummings, but that seemed to be one of my big takeaways from the session.
All right, just to give us a bit more context, apart from quizzes, what are some of the other online fundraising initiatives that have, and we heard a lot about them in the session last week, but just for those people that weren't in that session, can you just give us a quick recap on what some of those other ideas were? Yeah,
I mean, so you have, I'm going to be probably pulling from things that were mentioned in the sings and things that weren't in the session. So then there's firstly, really at the front end, just things like drives to convert tickets that would either have been refunded into donations. There's live streaming events and the fundraising asks around that, though there's loads of problems with that, because if you use something like YouTube, unless you have a certain amount of subscribers to your channel, I think it's really difficult to get that donation button put in. And then things like live performances. I probably missed loads and loads out.
Yeah, but I mean, there were a few other things. As a neutral facilitator, I can't really bring them in myself, but maybe somebody else wants to just help us get a bit more context. And what are some of the other initiatives that people have come up with in the session last week, but also in the Talkaoke session we had a couple of weeks ago? Does anyone want to add some extra things? We've heard a lot about live performances. We've heard about the quizzes, anything else that's happening online or online, offline as well? Okay, well, I'm just going to leave it.
I think, hey, I'll say something just to keep things going. And I think we've got one of the speakers from last week's session. Is that Caspian? Are you? Were you on board last week?
I was.
Caspian,
we may be coming to you in a minute to provide some useful, realistic content. But so one of the things that people talked about last week was around virtual crafts type ideas.
The dog show thing.
The competition type of thing, and that builds community. People need to be sort of digitally enabled to make that work. But and maybe that's less relevant in a arts and culture sort of way. I don't know whether crafts is culture or not. That's a moot
well, that's
point,
a question that we could talk about for the whole session if we wanted to.
We could indeed. But I think there was also some of the things people were talking about were. I see you've got a cat as well, Caspian. Wow,
Captain Haddock come to join us.
Right. Okay. Well, maybe that will win the cat prize tonight. It's not crafts, but it's the cat equivalent. There was the idea of events where sort of for special guests for your higher value donors perhaps, and an auction idea or something like that, but with a bit of a party at the end of it. The last hour, I remember they said there was a virtual magician doing the rounds. Other notes, a cocktail maker. Which you'd probably like that, Mikey.
We're ready for that later on.
I'm not quite sure how a cocktail maker works online, but I can kind of imagine it sort of doing demonstrations, and people can follow on at home.
For you.
And if you don't have Angostura bitters, you can use Marmite instead.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That speaks a man from experience. So those are some of the ideas, and I don't know if anybody on the chat's tried any of those sorts of things. Not the Angosturus, but and the Marmite rather.
Well, let's widen it out to not just what to do when you don't have the right cocktail ingredients, to a wider discussion about initiatives that have actually worked, that people have tried online. And we heard Caspian, you were on last week, so maybe you as well. You could just input. There's a great talk that we heard last week and some great ideas. Maybe you can input something just from your own personal experience. What have you tried that's actually worked? And obviously it's different for different people as well. So Caspian, tell us.
Cool. I can talk a little bit as to what I've observed rather than what I've necessarily done myself, as I'm not a fundraiser. But I've seen events such as the CBSO doing drinks on Zoom calls, and I think some of the things that have been more successful have been keeping things personal. So with your engaged donors, being able to have conversations with them and understand what it is that they want and expect from you during this time, rather than making assumptions about that, is a good way to engage with people. And then I think in terms of actually processing donations, there have been a lot of asks from people telling people about the situation they're in, and a lot of organisations are in dire straits, and I think it's important to be clear about that, because while there are many people who are doing that in a good way, actually if you go on a lot of arts organisations, there are still people who haven't made a clear ask or communicated the fact that we face a lot of people being made redundant or losing these organisations.
I mean, that's one of the things that came out, I think, quite a lot in the previous Talkaoke session, is about this personal connection, especially with long-term donors, and even just picking up the phone or other kinds of interaction that you can do remotely seem to be like a really, really important feature of the last session that we did. And certainly this question about, is now the right time to be asking for money, or is it about just cementing that relationship? And then most of the people last time felt that, yes, it is, because of the dire need of a lot of organizations. And I think it's probably that organizations like galleries that worked on a longer time scale that could, you know, probably be a bit more relaxed about asking for money now, and actually think about that longer, you know. And it's also, as another thing that came out from the last session was also, you know, what do you need from us? Because it was very much a two-way relationship between the donors and the organization. And, you know, even wanting to give is a need, or wanting to connect with your organization in these times is a need. So these are all things I think that came out. So it's not just about the large scale things where you stream out to 1,000 or 10,000 people, but also those individual connections as well, really important. Where do we want to go from here? Do people feel like they've learned new skills? Do people feel like they still need to acquire these digital skills? Does anyone feel like they've learned something new in this time, in these difficult times?
Andrea's nodding.
And Andrea, okay, a dangerous nod. Andrea, or is it Andrea or Andrea? Do you want to say, have you learned something new?
So this is one of the
the
new features of Zoom. Now we cannot unmute you. You're going to have to unmute yourselves. I hope everyone knows where that is. But yeah, take it away.
Sorry, it's Andrea. And
Andrea,
it doesn't matter. I think, we've definitely learned something through this, because we weren't doing any kind of digital work before all this started. But I'm not sure we're using it from a fundraising point of view yet. We've just got a couple of initiatives going on at the moment, which is to try and generate to get more people to sign up to our social media, with a view to building the relationship to ultimately go on and ask in the future. So, I mean, it might not be relevant. One of the things that we're doing at the moment is we're asking people to send us what we're calling an anchored tercet, which is a 3-word poem.
Right, okay. Yeah.
Where are you from, Andrea? Just to help.
I'm from November Club. We're a small performing arts company based in Morpeth in Northumberland.
Wow.
Yeah. So this anchor tercet is based on using Midsummer Night's Day, I think.
Yeah.
Whatever. And also we've had to cancel a production called Foods and Feuds that was based on a woman called Hannah Glass, who was a cook from up here in the 1700s.
Yeah.
And she produced, she did a lot of pickling of food and produced a cookbook that's gone all over the world, including to the White House in Washington. And we've tasked people with coming up with a pickling thing that will then go in a drink, and we want them to send us photos of their drink. So this is all kind of engagement with us that we've only ever used our website to tell people things. We haven't asked people to respond to us. So
in a way, it's a new paradigm of actually getting the discussion going online, and it is a very steep learning curve as well.
Yeah, it is.
And you're suddenly having to enroll people in social media and actually make that happen. Kane, you've got a point?
I guess it's just picking up on something that we spoke about at the last Talkaoke, of just response to your point about whether it's the right time to ask for money or not. But I guess off the back of that, of whether people are finding, I'm just interested of what the different asks are that people are making.
Yeah, I mean, obviously from Andrea's point of view, it's just getting that connection. Before you can ask people for money, you have to have that, you know, ability to connect remotely as well. But, you know, what then do you ask for? What is your ask? How do you kind of start the conversation? Can you shift it from just this general discussion into one which is very much about making people aware that the organization needs money? Has anyone got any views on that? Is that a hands up, Louisa, or is it just agreeing?
I didn't know whether to clap or put a thumbs up.
Okay, no.
Can do both.
We've actually got our own applause sound effect we can do for you. But you're just agreeing with that point. Is that? Have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I work for the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama in Cardiff. So we're a conservatoire higher education institution as well as an arts centre. And we have a membership scheme that supports our public performance programme and our students' engagement with that, essentially. And although we've always advertised the membership scheme in literature and things like that, we've never actually used our digital platforms really to promote fundraising. So we've decided to launch an appeal, student hardship appeal. So it's never something we've asked the public to engage with before. And it's a new way for us to kind of get our audiences involved with fundraising in a new way that we've never done before. So we can start asking our audiences on our social media platforms for donations to our student hardship fund. And it's kind of a nice way into that, because we've never really done that before.
How's it gone?
Well, we haven't launched it yet.
Okay,
it's happening this week, so sorry, this is kind of
so fingers crossed.
saying whether it's successful or not, but yeah, we're going to launch our first virtual event with our current members this week as well. So that will be an interesting first for us.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about the event? What's it going to be?
Well, every 3 months we normally hold an evening for our membership.
Right.
And they come to a drinks reception and they watch a performance. So actually we're going to bring that online instead, and we're having a Zoom meeting. I've asked a student if they will record a performance, and we're just going to share the screen, essentially. Okay. Very basic, and I'm not sure what the technology will be like. But we're going to just tell our members that it's going to be informal and ask for their feedback afterwards, essentially. If it works, great, we'll do it again. If it doesn't, then we've learned something and we know to try something different.
Okay, so I guess it's an initiative, and we're all in this situation where we're kind of thrown in at the deep end, and we've just got to suddenly pick up all these digital tools we may or may not be familiar with. Camilla, you've got a point?
Yeah, sorry, I'm still not used to this. Yeah, no, I was just going to say, for us, so I work for the Holborn Museum in Bath, and I'm head of development there, and we started very quickly with a crowdfunding appeal, which went against everything I normally do, which is plan.
Right.
But we were forced to in terms of our situation, and we were really overwhelmed by the response to that. But now we are working towards reopening. We are using the opportunity in a way that we've never before, in the sense that we are talking very, very blatantly. I'm working on signage at the moment to really explain to every visitor the situation that we as a sector face, because museums are very polite normally. We have no public funding, but we're really using this opportunity like never before to kind of explain to people, but also just to kind of say that amongst all this digital greatness, I think for us, not forgetting that a handwritten letter from a director goes a long way for the people that are left behind, some of our older donors who still haven't discovered technology, and sending something in the post or picking up the phone speaks volumes. So it's kind of we're working through now, but then it's the next 6 months when people get bored of screens, and how we can all adapt to that.
So in a way, you've got, obviously we've got a lot of very creative people, and we've heard already some creative ideas from Andrea about the poem, and obviously we've got to keep that creativity going in terms of the formats to keep people interested. You're saying as well that you're starting to open up the museum, and it's going to be much more like, here's a Roman mosaic, can we have some money, kind of, in the signage kind of thing. So but how is that going? And are we sort of too narrow in terms of what these technologies are? Talking about letter writing and phone calls, they're also remote technologies. And do you feel like you need to promote the opening of the reopening of the museum, or are you worried about too many numbers coming through?
Who knows?
Don't know.
And we don't even know. We are trying to plan to open, but
Yeah.
you know, that could change, the date
Yeah.
could change. We are trying to plan as much ahead as possible, and make it as safe for visitors. But we will be, you know, we're moving from museums typically still use a lot of hard copy print. We're moving, everything we're doing is through social media. We've, you know, our numbers for social media have just rocketed, and it has just shown us that anything is possible. I'm a real believer in opportunity.
Okay.
So I'm excited. I mean, I'm terrified, but I'm excited about new ways of working.
It's a terrified excitement.
I mean, surely we all feel similarly that, you know, this is a real shake-up for our sectors, but we can do things differently and more dynamically and more efficiently, and hopefully...
Well, in a way we have to, don't we?
We have to, So, you know, trying to be positive.
Okay, well, hopefully we're going to bring that positive vibe along. Let's go to Emily. You've got your hand up.
Good to bring in Wes as well, because Wes, you're from the London Transport Museum, aren't you?
Yes, hello everyone. Just on that point, actually, I've just been surprised at how many of our existing programmes, which we've tried to replicate in digital formats, have gone down well with our supporter base. So we run a programme called Hidden London of tours of disused underground stations, and obviously we can't do that at the moment.
Yeah.
But there's been a huge interest in kind of putting some of that material, the digital films that we've created, and the guys that actually do those tours doing that digitally online. That's gone down really well with our supporter base. And similarly with some of our patrons, we've got a few sites which are really quite difficult to gain any sort of meaningful access to for more than 2 or 3 people. And actually our collections director has kind of pulled together some photographic presentations to the point where some of our patrons are enjoying the presentation tours digitally online more than they actually are doing so in person at the events themselves. So there's been a huge appetite for that, and that's something we hadn't really quite expected.
Yeah, so you're kind of discovering new things and reaching, although you're losing audience, you're actually reaching new audience as well.
Well, yeah, and I think it's making us think: is there a digital offer out there longer term that could help as a sort of revenue generator that, you know, kind of creates a new arm of funding longer term? But it was just quite interesting just to see the level of take up, and actually, is there a model that we can replicate that goes a bit further along the line and not just in a response to, you know, the situation we're in at the moment?
Yeah, okay, so there could be some longer term learnings, but could I just ask you, Wes, before I go to Emily, obviously you're connected with new audiences, but and you've got this digital kind of expansion, if you will, but how easy is it to convert that into actual money flowing into donations or whatever it might be, revenue generating?
Well, I think that's the bit where at the moment we're just trying to see if we can convert people that would normally come along and experience the museum or these spaces to see what sort of interest there's been within that base that we have. And I think now is the next part of that, to see, you know, what are people prepared to pay for? Are there any donations that we can start to solicit from that? So that's the next bit of our puzzle, actually knowing that we've got a proposition that people seem to be engaged by. What do we do next with it to turn that into income?
So it's very much watch this space.
Yeah.
Let me come to Emily. Sorry, what was your point, Emily?
I wanted to pick up a little bit on both what Camilla said and actually on what Wes has just said now, a bit about Zoom fatigue and also this kind of virtual spaces stuff. So we at Streetwise Opera do not have a venue, and so in some ways we're more fortunate than a lot of arts organisations because we don't have a venue to maintain and keep running, and we don't heavily rely on commercial or box office income, and so we've been kind of struggling about what events to do. And Kane mentioned that we did a quiz quite early on when quizzes were still really popular, and someone said, "Oh, you're going to do this every week?" I was like, no, it's really hard work, especially with celebrities, and also there's only so many quizzes you can do and everyone is now bored of them. So we're thinking about different types of events that we can do, and I think the kind of educative side of the arts is going down really well. Panel discussions about previous shows, chats with artistic directors, performers, choreographers, you know, interesting insights that people haven't that people don't normally hear about. And there are a couple of musicians talking at the moment about the role of gender in art song and things like that, and really exploring topics of conversations that audience members might not necessarily have thought about in the past.
So in a way, it's about keeping it fresh online and just reinventing and reinventing and reinventing.
Yeah,
Even though
I
that's
think,
quite probably taxing thing to do, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that you know, I would love to do if I had a venue is a kind of in the dark tour, potentially with, you know, one of your namesake patrons or the director, you know, talk, or the founder going back and talking about, actually, this is my experience of this building, and these are the experiences I've had here, and bringing you really into that person's world, and kind of sharing insights that, again, you might not necessarily cover on a background tour. I think there's a really interesting way of bringing people into your space in a new way, and uncovering some of the histories or things like that. So
so it's not, so there are actually new things that can be done when we go online. But I also want to go back to Camilla's point that when we say, you know, remote ways of contacting people, it's not just the Zoom meeting or the stream. There's lots of other ways of connecting with people as well.
But I do think we've got to start thinking about people going back to socializing or going back to work, and how we manage that, because also we're not planning any virtual events really at the moment later than September, because we don't know if people are still going to be in their houses at 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock on a Thursday evening, because we don't know what the social life is going to be like. And as soon as we can start socializing again, people are not going to be in front of their screens.
Well, that's a huge question. How do we go back, and what is the way of getting back to whatever this new normal is going to be? Kane's had his hand up for ages. Let me come straight to you, Kane, and then I'll go to you, Dan. What did you want to say, Kane?
Firstly, it's just a small point to say I'm not bored of quizzes yet. I think I do 2 quizzes a week at the moment.
So you've got a high quiz threshold then.
I mean, they're pretty amazing. I do one with all my family, which is just, I mean, the dynamics at play are incredible. But on a real point, I think there is this issue. I don't know. It came up actually in a conversation with someone from quite a big trust and foundation, of just like, are organizations maybe being realistic about what they'll look like going forward? Have they really kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of, you know, how they adapt to the new normal longer term? I think the story's changed from just like now, these 3 months, these 6.
Is there any way to have a strategy when we don't even know when it's going to be, what the rules are going to be? Is it possible to have a strategy of how to move forward, how to move back to the social world?
Yeah, I think so. I think you can do so. I mean, I don't think it'll ever be perfect, because it would have to be adaptable. But I think it's just, I think it's thinking really differently about how you use your spaces. And similarly, it picks up a bit on what Emily was saying. I think lots of organizations aren't just talking about issues that audiences may never have heard about before around mental health and around other issues, but they're also running completely new programs that they would never have thought of before.
So there is an opportunity just to explore,
to do something totally
issues,
a bit like, say, Cynthia of London Symphonia and their focus in terms of supporting around mental health and well-being of musicians. That is something they were doing in a small way before, which they're doing in a bigger way now.
Now that's come to the foreground. So absolutely. Let me come to Caspian, I'll come to you in a second. Let me just come to Dan.
It was just something, again, from what Emily was saying in terms of spaces. And one of the interesting things that's happened with lockdown is that people are at home at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or 7 o'clock in the afternoon, and we are doing these sorts of things, talking to our screens. But when we do that, we've got, well, I've got got my house behind me, but most people are actually in their houses. Obviously not really, because it's raining here at the moment. most people are in their houses, and we're being invited into their kitchens or their living rooms or even their bedrooms is happening on occasions in a completely appropriate way. And just that sort of level of intimacy that happens when you invite strangers or people that you know in a professional capacity into your own home creates a different dynamic in the way that that you're engaging. I've seen that. So was at an event organised last week by the Kiln Theatre. And Anna knows about this as well. And one of the speakers was they had the artistic director of the Kiln and 3 of their trustees. One of their trustees is Dawn Ostwick. She's their chair. She obviously is an influential person from a fundraising perspective, running the National Lottery Community Fund. And she was talking about the fact that she's had a number of phone calls with people in the DCMS or other ministers from the Treasury, and it's felt a little bit odd inviting them into her kitchen where she does her calls when her husband comes in and makes himself a cup of cocoa or something. But she actually felt reasonably happy to invite a group of supporters of the Kiln Theatre to come and share with her in her kitchen and for her to talk to that. I think there's been about 50 people on the screen, and so. There is that sense that some charities are able to open themselves up and open the individuals within those charities up in a way that never would have happened before lockdown. And I don't know, it'll be interesting to see where that goes after lockdown, because that kind of thing will be there was a strength to that. There was a value.
The one thing that I get from it, Dan, is that you get the feeling that these are real people. You know, when you go into like these important people's celebrities' homes, you realise they've got similar kind of cats. And I'm going to come to Caspian in a minute. You know, and they're not in a way.
There's an authenticity, isn't there? That's really valuable. And I think we need to be able to find ways that we can continue to do events which have that level of authenticity. They're not just contrived events to drag money out of people, but it's actually about community, and it's about engagement. It's about valuing everybody that's in that, because they're all the charity, the theatre, or whatever it is. It belongs to all the people who love it and who are engaged with it.
It's a great equalizer. Let me come to Caspian, and then is it Teresa or Teresa? I'm not sure, but we'll find out in a minute. We'll go to Caspian first.
Thanks. I just wanted to come back to what Wes was saying around adapting the work that you're doing for a digital setting, and I think it relates also to why everyone's picked up the quiz. And I think it's around the format of the events. It's setting something that people are comfortable with and giving a format to an event that makes it easy to engage, because people know how to do a quiz. It's something that they would do in person, and putting it in an online context doesn't change things too drastically. So you're not putting people outside of their comfort zones by saying, here's a load of new rules to how you have to engage with us as an organisation. So I think that's an interesting thing, and I think by trying to replicate some of the work that you do and adjusting it slightly to do it online, that is a comfortable position for people to be in.
I mean, I have to say, for us, we like to put people at least to the edge of their comfort zone, if not right out of the door, which you might find out about a bit later on. But let me go. Is it Teresa? Teresa, let me come to you.
Hello, it's Teresa.
Teresa, sorry.
That's all right. Thanks for asking. I just have a question for the floor, really. One of the things that was talked about in the webinar last week was about different platforms and, what different platforms you can use, and that they all offer different things. And one of the speakers said, and I think it was Denise, said, she started to say there are a lot better platforms than Zoom, but she stopped herself and said something like, there are different options. I've pretty much exclusively attended things on Zoom, and I'm just wondering if other people have used other platforms and what other things they're offering, and just kind of anyone really, I'd love to hear some some other options.
I mean, are you a little bit frustrated by Zoom? Do you feel limited by Zoom?
No, I don't have any issue with using Zoom, but I suppose I'd love to know if other people have got experience with other options, what the kind of pros and cons of different ones are that people are finding, before I just kind of by default use Zoom because that's what everyone else seems to be doing.
I mean, I'm going to ask the audience on this one. Is it just Zoom? We're here on Zoom. Is this the elephant in the Zoom? Are there other platforms and what are the pros and cons of using other platforms? We just all defaulted. We've been creative about all different ways of contacting people, but we're just all using Zoom. Let me come to you, Andrea.
I'll get there. I just wanted to highlight something that I've just heard about today, in that there's one of our local organisations, a museum, used a Facebook streaming event, and they're finding that Facebook streaming events are being scammed. So they set up this Facebook streaming event for free, and somehow the scammers have got hold of it and actually started to charge people to participate in the Facebook streaming event. So I don't know how it all happened, but I'd say if you're thinking of using Facebook streaming, that might be something to look into before you chose that as an option.
Okay, I mean, in terms of Teresa's question about other platforms, have you tried anything else?
I mean, we've tried Teams at work, but we couldn't get, I mean, that's only any good if you can contact everybody. And I've tried Skype locally with a local book club. Again, no. Yeah,
I mean, to be honest, I would just say, I don't normally, as I was saying to begin with, I don't normally like to talk about our own opinions, but we are actually trying to create our own platform for the arts, because, I mean, we work with Zoom almost on a daily basis, and you can see the sort of limitations of it. And I personally feel that there could be like a custom-made arts platform, but that's a big project and it would need a lot of funding. So maybe if anyone's interested, send me an email afterwards. But what other people use other platforms or find Zoom frustrating? Is it limiting? What do you think? Yeah, Margot?
I want to bring David's point from the chat. And the point is about charging people for events. I mean, are people willing to pay for online events? And I must admit, from my personal life, as much as I know and I realize how much preparation sometimes goes into online events, and I particularly like the kind of educational events as well, I probably wouldn't want to pay for them. So I wonder whether actually giving people something like a gift, like something physical, is going to be a better option, to show that they can get something back from, when they donate money, they can actually take something with them.
Yeah, so what you're saying is like a direct kind of almost pay gate isn't necessarily the way ahead, you don't think, for streaming.
I'd want to get something, tangible.
Yeah. Okay, we're talking about, I guess we've moved on from the idea of, Zoom. I feel like, with the deafening silence about other platforms,
I could add something.
Oh yeah, go on.
So I don't know loads about this, but I was quite impressed with the Hay Festival, which used Crowdcast as its platform, and I think some other organisations have been using that as well. That seemed to work quite effectively as a way to have lots of. It was relatively easy to get into it, and it was a way of presenting content where people can write things, and they can't engage in the way that we're doing now, perhaps on this sort of Zoom, but it was a way of engaging with a lot of people all at the same time. So that's maybe something to look into.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, what I really miss is this audience response. I mean, we've gone to the point of actually kind of having our own audience in the studio. But, I do think there is something about that kind of, we could do better, I think, in terms of liveness on our online platforms. Kane, what's your point?
I was just wondering, it was more just a question to everyone of, particularly for galleries and museums, which are, obviously sort of going to be amongst the first to open, is just, I'm quite interested where people are starting to do, pre-registering for coming along to a gallery or a museum, whether people are including asking for a donation or asking for a fee within that booking process. And also how things like, I guess if anyone had any insight of where they've done like online shows, how that's gone, where they have asked for money or they have charged a fee.
I mean, it comes back in a way to Margot's point about, it just seems wrong to ask at the beginning when you're doing a live stream. If we are opening up galleries, at what point do you ask for money? How do you ask for a donation? Has anyone got experience of like what works and what doesn't work? Any successes or not quite successes? Or is the jury still out on this one?
I think Louisa's got a point.
Have you got a point, Louisa? Yes, hello.
I was just going to say that we're our box office team are thinking about doing more pay what you feel like type events, so people can have the option. And for us as a fundraising team, that will be actually really interesting, so we can use it to start looking at our database and seeing who are the people that are interested in giving more or making a donation for the event instead. So as Camilla was saying, I think that's a good opportunity for us actually to use it as an open door to look into who might be donors in the future for us. And I don't know, this is my ignorance here, but if you ask for a suggested donation to join an event, can you claim gift aid on that? I'm assuming so. Whereas obviously you wouldn't be able to claim.
That's a really good point, actually.
Ticket price. So
how is that if it is through Eventbrite or if it is after the event or during the event? Is that donation gift aidable, if that's even a word? And does anyone know that? I mean, I'm not a fundraiser, so I've absolutely no idea, but that's just, I guess, a technical point that, that's maybe someone can fill us in on if you want to. Oh, we've got a message on the chat from David. As long as it's truly a donation and people can join the event by paying less. So in a way, you are gaining something by having this kind of pay what you will kind of thing. Do you want to add to that, David, in the verbal chat, or is that the full comment? Oh, yeah, come on. Yes, you can do it. Come on, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically all of it. It's sort of similar to events and things like that. So, yeah, if you can either do it as split benefit, but as long as you're not restricting people who don't donate at that full level, then you can as a donation.
Have you tried that yourself, or is it just you getting this from other people?
People often try it with gala events, for example, where you might split out the tickets, so have a ticket price.
So this is more like a live event, but you've not tried this online?
Not for online, no.
Okay. I mean, this
the trick would be to also try to, with gift aid, it's also making sure that you've got the gift aid declaration from the donor. You either need to find a way to capture that information online, which may make the booking process slightly more cumbersome. It may be all right, but that's something to think through.
Yeah,
or you find a way to get that declaration afterwards if you haven't already got it from the donor before.
In a way, I feel like with this group, there's a lot of ideas out there, but these things all need to be tried. And we're in a shifting situation, so by the time we come back for the next session and people have tried these things, it might be all different again. So, but nevertheless, I feel like there's a lot of ideas out there, but not very much really has been tried yet. I guess just to say, Talkaoke is kind of up to you where you want to go with this conversation. Do you want to talk about the Zoom fatigue? Do you want to talk about how to get back? Camilla brought up the point is like, how do we, and Emily as well, is how do we get back to the live? Do we want to talk about initiatives in terms of fundraising online, and how, I think a lot of the question has been how that connects to online streams or online content. Obviously there's other ways of fundraising online as well. It's kind of up to you where you want to take this conversation. My job's simply just to keep it positive and keep the ideas flowing, and try and sometimes eke out a little bit more from people, find out a bit more about what they're actually, where they're coming from, that kind of thing. So where do you want to take this conversation, people? Where are you going to go with this? What is the important sort of direction for you? Anybody? I mean, it's kind of up to you. It's your time. Oh, we've got Wes down here. Wes, in you come.
Sorry, I don't know if this has been discussed elsewhere, but I'm wondering if anyone's been asked to look at an alternative to a fundraising gala or dinner, or big events. Certainly certainly what we've been asked to look at is whether there's the potential for an online auction or some other way of replicating what we would have done at the gala event itself.
Could you use Deliveroo for the foods?
Exactly, but I know lots of I've heard, whether I've not seen any examples of organisations that are looking at how they can replicate those events virtually, but I'm just not convinced or sure how we might do that. I'm just wondering if anyone had been tasked with the same thing, or if anyone had any experience or done any thinking on that at all.
I mean, have you got any sort of half ideas about how you might do it, or what you might replace it with?
Not really. It kind of come up in a discussion today, and so we thought we might test it out here and see if anyone had come up with anything. But no, we haven't had any time to think it through at all.
It's a good challenge, I think, between all the imaginative ideas we've had so far. I think we might have at least some half ideas. Emily's got something. Emily?
Yeah, someone in the last Talkaoke that I joined was talking about, they had, I mean, it was an already planned gala that then obviously couldn't go ahead, but we did an auction alongside our quiz using Givergy, which went down really well. And auctions are not something that we do very often because we work with people who are homeless, and it's just not generally appropriate. But we decided that if we could get some fun lockdown related prizes for free, we didn't put much effort into it. We got, I think, 7 prizes in a week, ranging from kind of like 20 quid to 100 quid of value, and we raised 700 quid from it. So it's not a lot, but it was just quite a fun thing to do on the side of an event that was free. So I think there is a general appetite for it, but I think you have to be really aware of what your prizes are. Holidays.
I'm going to take 2 things from that as well, because it's also about how you connect different events together, and maybe there's a bit of a clue there. It's potentially you're connecting these different online things together, and then you've got like almost like a sort of fundraising sideline to the main online event, which is just about reaching to people. Kane's just put in the chat, I hate gals. I'm not going to let him get away with that.
We've heard that.
Yeah, we know that, Kane. It's nothing new. But anyway, so I mean, is now the chance to sort of reimagine the gala dinner or reimagine this? Margot, you've got a point?
I've got a point because it came up in the chat.
Yeah.
And it's about, I think, was it Dan? Was it Dan or David? I'm not sure. One of you said, there's me thinking as the end of galas. It was David saying that. Yeah. And I wonder what people thought about it and whether it's time to take a little poll, if that's how it's pronounced.
It would be handy for Wes to go back and said, look, I've done the research. And
no, everybody hates it.
Galas are over. Galas are done. They're pre-COVID, they're not post-COVID. Is this the end of the gala dinner altogether? And if so, what do we replace it with? Is it with auctions? Is it with something else? Is it over for the gala dinner? Do I auction the bow tie and dinner jacket now?
I reckon we should do the poll on it.
We should do a poll on it. That's a great idea, Margot. Let's do a poll.
I was making
we're going to try this new technology. Hopefully, maybe just, Rick, if you want to just put those backgrounds in the chat again. What we're going to do it with a background. If you say, hang on a sec, Caspian, I haven't done the question yet.
I've got it, Rick.
Is it over for the gala dinner? So you're saying no, it's Caspian. You're saying no, it's not over for the gala dinner. If you think yes, it's over for the gala dinner, upload your green background. If you think it is over for the if it is not over for the gala dinner, upload the red background. If you're not sure, upload the yellow background, and we'll just get a nice visual. We're really starting already to get a sense of visually. If you go to gallery view, you'll see a cascade of colours here. If people don't know how to do it, just come online and ask me and I'll tell you, and that will tell you. We've got a few sound effects here, time's running out, so this is very much split the audience.
Oh, nice, great work there, Louisa.
Louisa's going for the, luckily she's got something pink to add.
Justine said she doesn't have the background, but she's going red on this one. Caroline's is not working, it's good for our experiment, but she's going with green.
Okay, it's so split, it's like...
Emily can't do the background.
Yeah, I mean...
Really sorry to hear that, Emily. What are you going for?
It's a Mareza or Mareza has got a pink kind of icon, so I'm going to take that as a no as well from Mareza. It's like totally split. It's like 1/3 say yes, 1/3 say no, and 1/3 don't know. Is that a yellow there? That looks like you've got Emily, you've got a plant in a kind of jean jacket or something like that. But anyway, that's way off the subject.
I want to find out from people who voted yellow, who are not sure, what are your reservations? What is the half issue that you have with galas?
Okay. Yeah.
What's holding you back?
We can go to Anna. Can we go to you and maybe just lose the yellow background because you're looking very scary there, Anna. Why are you not sure about this? What is your uncertainty? What's the yes and no about it?
I really don't know whether donors will want to come back to galas or not.
Yeah.
It depends whether social distancing is basically reduced, and whether people just want to stay at home and do virtual events instead as they're getting used to them. So that was my reason for maybe. That's all.
Okay, so it's more like a bit of nervousness of the donors and of the big cheeses.
Yeah.
And Genevieve, you're nodding. I can, because you had yellow as well. I wonder.
Do you want to come in on this? No pressure, but do you want to come in on this one?
No, of course. I think we've been having a similar conversation in terms of not sure what the donors, what the supporters will want to be doing. We haven't done a gala in a sense of the conventional gala. We did an event that was called it was a cabaret. So it was slightly reduced. It wasn't a sit-down dinner, but it was food and drink, and it worked quite well. And that was for a set of 120 guests, and that would be something that we'd be holding in December. So, we're already thinking, is that 120 people? All those considerations in play, but whether or not they'd be comfortable coming back, and whether they.
Okay, so it's more worry about the audience, but also there's another point there that you're already reinventing the kind of classic gala dinner into something new. Okay, well let's go.
Because of the fatigue, the gala fatigue, basically, that we would be. Oh, there's too many. We don't want that. We want to be
okay, so there's gala fatigue as well as Zoom fatigue and web fatigue. And Kane's got his hand up, but I just want to, before that, because I feel like we've heard the kind of anti-gala view, and we're going to come to that in a minute, but there were a few people. Caspian, I noticed, was straight in there with a definite no. So I just want to come to you first, Caspian, and get your side of it, and then we're going to come to Kane.
Sure, I think that it's good that we're reimagining how to engage with people, and I don't think that we should stop that. But I think keeping these things happening in tandem will broaden how many people you can engage with, because there are accessibility and barriers to entry. There are benefits to doing these things digitally that that you can't replicate in person, but also I can't remember whose point it was earlier, but the thought of wanting something tangible and having an in-person experience. There is
There's
something
still
about
a
being
space for that once we're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think about Genevieve's point about reinventing the gala slightly? Do you feel like it needs to be reinvented, or are you kind of happy with it as it is? Is it quite sort of like, in a way, a kind of traditional, almost like the kind of Christmas dinner sort of feel of things?
I think reinvention sounds like the ideal opportunity to add the digital aspect to it, because if you keep the in-person part as it is, then for traditionalists, gala lovers can keep happy while also having another route to.
So maybe it's a kind of hybrid gala with an online element as well, and that's an interesting point. Perhaps the gala could go hybrid, and then everybody would be happy. Apart from Kane, obviously, so I'm going to come straight to Kane, who hates gals and galas. Kane, what would you be happy with a sort of hybrid? Is that a good compromise? A hybrid online offline gala evolved with a bit of cabaret as well? Could that work?
Possibly. I mean, to be honest, I'm really interested actually of maybe getting Caroline to mention the point that you just posted in the chat, because my issue, which I think Caroline hits on the head massively, is like, it's what you were saying, is that we're probably, none of us here, maybe with a few exceptions, aren't really the audience for gala dinners. But I would argue, like, why are we not the audience for these sort of events? I think it's fundamentally that I was involved right at the start of doing fundraising, of doing a massive gala dinner annually that raised a lot of money. But like, the thing you just immediately feel is like, it's really undemocratic. And I think, I've always fundamentally believed that, like, that you should try and involve people who, one person's £10 is another person's $1 million.
Okay.
But I'd like to hear, Caroline's point on that as well, because I think you make a similar point to me.
Margot's got a hand up. I'm going to go to Caroline. Obviously, if you want to come in, there's no pressure. Do you feel like you could add to what Kane said?
I mean, Kane, haven't you just said? I think that's my good point, in the fact that we should then think about why my reaction was we're not really the main audience for galas. It just seems very much still like it's aimed at a very top echelon of people and wealth, and there's not this, it does not feel. I have been to one of these. I am not the main kind of person who goes to these, obviously, and it definitely I did not feel that my £10 was worth as much as the thousands of pounds that I could see in front of me being spent by other people on auctions. And it was I found it quite an uncomfortable experience. So I don't know if a hybrid version would work, because I think there would be a lot of work to do to try and convince people that it's even for them in any way, even if it was kind of expanded, if it still included that element of like very, very, very wealthy people just kind of dropping thousands of pounds very quickly. Even if there was an element that did not include that, I think it would still make a lot of people very wary of getting.
In a way, there's this gala awkwardness, and it's inequality awkwardness. Let's just say it. Margot, you've got a point, and I'll come to you, Camilla.
My point is about the digital space is a bit more non-hierarchical, I think, or it can be, and it's more accessible by people who wouldn't typically go to these galas. I personally haven't been to a gala, but I would like to go just to kind of see what it's like, and actually maybe meet some of the people who are there. Because if we're just getting stuck with like how many different quizzes can we do, then clearly like maybe it's not as entertaining. But actually for us as human beings, meeting other interesting human beings, I think that can be infinitely, and having interesting conversations, that could be infinitely entertaining. and it could be learning curve as well, you know. So I would be more interested in, you know, democratizing the gala space, or you know, just opening up to everyone. And also, who says, you know, can we subvert the idea of auctions anyway? It doesn't matter about how much money maybe you have to tell a story why you want this particular item.
Okay,
and
so
we can
it could
auction
be
anything.
almost like a worthiness auction rather than a money auction, but is
Yeah.
that going to really help the fundraisers? Isn't the point of the gala dinner that people come with huge checkbooks to the event? Camilla?
Yeah, just I guess I sit somewhere in the middle, that, you know, as fundraisers, our aim is to raise money. And I know that, you know, some of our donors, they just love that special access, that special moment. And also we have people who certainly couldn't afford to come to a gala. But we need to kind of create access routes for everyone we interact with. And I can't second guess what our major donors would like to do in 6 months' time. I think people will feel very different. Some people will still feel very vulnerable and worried, and others will just be desperate to have dinner somewhere with an artist or something. And maybe this is, you know, I've worked on very, very big galas that bring in lots of money, and also wasted lots of time organizing galas that didn't bring in much at all. There are pros and cons. But, you know, maybe having something smaller, more intimate, you know, still giving that kind of, you know, maybe a very small dinner of 10 people with a CEO or an artist or a musician, which is, you know, maybe not now, maybe when we're still distancing, that's not appropriate, but somewhere in the middle.
What about Caspian's point about this kind of hybrid online offline gala? Could that work as a format?
I don't know. I mean, one thing that is great at the moment is, you know, we have quite a lot to learn from the American institutions. You know, they're kind of slightly ahead of us, and they're also much bolder in their ask. And they're, you know, they're cancelling their massive, you know, $20 million galas, but also hosting them online quite successfully. But I think there is a risk you could end up wasting quite a lot of energy trying to organise or recreate something which was supposed to feel very special and not quite getting it, you know. But but you know, there are other organisations who are sending out, you know, questionnaires and surveys and trying to understand what their donors would like to do. You know, we have to kind of ask and not guess.
So in a way, it's sort of feeling your way through it a little bit. I noticed that Genevieve's got a hand up, but Justine, you had your real hand up as opposed to the virtual hand before then. So let me come to you. And then
I was actually just propping myself up, sorry, because I've run out of charge. But if I can, I mean, I've done 15 gala dinners now in my life at London Transport Museum. And for us, there absolutely is the scope for it, because I suppose for our event, it's not about, I suppose, the elitism. This is an industry gathering. This is a networker. This is doing business. And it absolutely has its place, because the people who attend our events can't do this any other way. You know, we have become that event every year where people fly in from, you know, the US and Europe to come to our event, because it gives them the access that they can't get otherwise, in the environment they can't get otherwise. So, I mean, I absolutely don't think right now that there is the option really for changing the niche that a gala dinner has in that respect. Though absolutely, when Camilla was talking about, you know, the small dinners with CEOs, that's a brilliant kind of way of diversifying in this current context where social distancing makes a massive dinner impossible.
Yeah. I mean, what about this idea of evolving, kind of almost evolving gala dinners into something else? Oh, did we lose? Oh, yeah, there we are. Sorry, everything just readjusted. And you just moved about 4 places there, Justine. So I found you now. Can it evolve?
I think even the gala dinner evolves. Certainly ours evolves every year. But I think it becomes almost an and scenario rather than a instead of. I think when social distancing is going to allow a massive gala event to happen, it will be gala dinners and smaller dinners and virtual catch-ups. you know, because I think people have just shown that breadth of options, you know, the virtual quiz, the how to get your staff more widely engaged. Exactly. I don't think it possibly the kind of auctions of old where you're relying upon money can't buy experiences can't happen right now.
Okay.
But,
also, I'm going to take that, Justine, into that idea of like the experience, and you know, just throw that out to the people on this conversation, because maybe there's something to be said about like offering experiences that when gala dinners can't happen, that could be something else. And we talked about it a little bit here and there, as in terms of tours or in terms of meetings with artists. But perhaps we need to think about that a bit more. But anyway, let me just come to Genevieve, and I just want to also say that Emily's cat is actually more like my cat, Meryl Streep, than Caspian's cat, but that's not relevant. Genevieve, let me come to you.
Yeah. I was enjoying the cat, very jealous. No, I was just reading the chat, and I don't know who mentioned it first, but someone was talking about raffle. Yeah. And I was just wondering, has anyone done a raffle in this time? Because this is something that we did as part of our cabaret, our small scale alternative to a gala. But we stranded that bridged that with the cabaret event itself, an auction on the night with just 3 items, and then a raffle that we did pre and then drew actually a few days later. And to kind of span out to people that maybe couldn't come to the event, it was kind of a broader aspect. And we were going to be doing one this summer. We'd already kind of secured a selection of prizes, and right now it's just kind of on hold, partly because some of the prizes aren't practical. But I was just wondering if anyone had done kind of an online raffle or anything like that as an alternative, or any thoughts on it.
Okay, we're going to put that question out there. Has anyone done an online raffle or something close to that, as opposed to the auction or some of the other things? But I also want to pick up as well on this idea. You didn't exactly say, Genevieve, but like this idea of maybe opening up the gala dinner by streaming it and by having an online version of the gala dinner. Would that actually open up the gala dinner, and could you then also include the raffle into that? I'm just rejiggling the whole fundraising kind of terrain for you guys. But let me come to Teresa. What's your point? Oh, just go on.
Hi, sorry. Yes, raffles. We've had a raffle during this time, but it's probably not quite what you're thinking of. But I thought, seeing as we have done one, I would say. So I work for the Landmark Trust, which is a building restoration charity, but also a holiday company, and that's where the majority of our funds come from, is for people paying to stay in our buildings for a holiday. And obviously those buildings have all been closed for the last 3 months. We have a raffle every year in spring. It runs from about late February to mid-May, roughly. But it's not specifically an online raffle, it's an ordinary raffle. We send people tickets in the post. You can play online. But I just thought it was interesting to give you the feedback, because people have responded really well to it this year, and it's done better than it's done the past few years, which surprised me. We didn't expect it to do as well, given what's been going on. Our prizes are all just money for holidays. So the top prize is £5,000 towards holidays. So obviously, once our buildings are open again, you'll be able to use your prize, and obviously if the buildings are closed for a long time, the time limit on that will be extended. But yeah, so it doesn't have kind of the same implications of a raffle where you're giving away prizes of different experiences and things which just aren't doable at the moment. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting to make the point.
Sorry,
Okay,
can I just?
Oh yeah.
Sorry, that's really quick. Sorry, hand. 2 hands. Can I just ask about?
That we spent 5 minutes doing at the beginning. I mean, some people, Genevieve's been doing it. But anyway, go on, Camilla.
Just really quickly, can I just ask about the amount of admin time it takes you to deliver that raffle and the gambling laws around it? Just quickly.
You're asking the wrong member of the team. It's not my area. But for one of my colleagues who works 3 days a week, it's probably for 4 or 5 months of the year, it's a decent chunk of what she's doing. It's probably at least half of her time is being spent on raffle.
To do something like that.
It's quite time intensive, I would say.
And what about this question about the gambling laws? Oh, now everyone's just chiming in like it's turning into absolute chaos. What's your point, Genevieve?
I was just saying that even our kind of small, I say small because it's not in a scale of your guys' raffle, was quite a lot of admin. But in terms of like kind of the licensing, depending on what kind of raffle it is, if it's online or not, you have different. You have the gambling licensing, and then you have your kind of borough licensing. So we had to apply for us to Camden to have a license, all this. But that bit wasn't so heavy. It's more the kind of like organising and that kind of admin side of it was probably the more heavy side.
Just to say, I mean, I just think what we're all facing also is, you know, limited resource. We might lose team members or have different, you know, restructured organisations, and every decision we make around fundraising has to be worth every minute and penny of our expenditure. So it's just kind of useful to hear what has worked, how much time it's taken people, you know, how we might need to refocus on what we're all doing.
I mean,
so, yeah.
Without being negative, isn't it a bit of an impossible situation though, where you're having to try new things and try new initiatives and take risks, and at the same time bringing more money with less staff in a completely unpredictable and unexpected environment? Is it really possible to actually kind of ride this wave, you know, and actually have the time and space to experiment with these things in this situation when, as you said, suddenly you'll find such a lot of administration you have to do just trying a new initiative? That's a bit of a negative point, but it seems to be the implication of what you're saying from there. We are kind of in our last 10 minutes, so it is time to get the final thoughts. There's been a few people listening into this, both on the Facebook chat, but also on the Zoom, that haven't said anything yet. We'd really like to get your comments. If you don't feel like going on video or online, just type it into the chat and Margot or Kane or somebody will read it out, because I think it is important to get everybody's kind of, or as many people as possible's perspective on this. I didn't mean to be that negative, but it just seemed like, you know, there's always this kind of the other side of it, which is that you have to spend time to actually try these new things out when there's maybe that's not that time of the staff available to do these things. Kane, you've got a point, and I'll go to, no, let me go to Rose, because you've not said anything yet, so I'll come straight to you. Sorry, Rose? Can you just unmute, Rose? There we go.
Sorry. Hi. I just wanted to say that it's an invitation. So I work in the RAISE program in the Institute of Fundraising, and talking about live events, the Institute of Fundraising is having their fundraising convention from the 6th to the 8th of July. Right. And I want to invite you to apply to the RAISE bursaries. So this year we're offering 3 full bursaries to attend to fundraising convention that is live. And the bursary will give you access to the 3 days of live sessions and activities, and all 80, we have 80 on-demand sessions, and I will share the link with you here so you can apply.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, just while you're on, you've muted yourself now, but I'm going to ask this question instead to Kane. Is it an impossible situation? Is it hard to try things out when you don't have the time and you're under so much pressure? Or have you just got a totally different thought? Kane?
No, I was going to actually pick up on that. I mean, I was going to also just mention that Caspian makes it quite a nice thing, mentions a nice thing that a few celebrities and artists have been doing raffles on Instagram, letting people bid by using the comment section, which just seems like 21st century as we can get, except using Twitch. I mean, it's a really difficult one. I mean, I had a similar question in my mind, which was, are people, whereas initially everything was a bit scratchy and a bit rough around the edges and just a bit shit, and we're all finding our way, and we're all having deeply embarrassing Zoom conversations where we accidentally turned ourselves into potatoes. I just wondered whether people are maybe being less generous nowadays as we go further on, in terms of like the stuff that they will stick around for, if it's not of really high quality. And I guess to your point as well, Mikey, I think it's a really tricky thing. I think there is a need to continue to try things and put stuff out there, but and that's not just in fundraising, that's the wider work that all organizations are doing. But that's really, the reality is that's really tough if half your staff are furloughed or more. I've been talking to what's called Town Hall Symphony Hall in Birmingham. They're like, they've gone down from like thousands of people to a core team of 12. That's difficult.
Yeah. Okay. So is it really possible to innovate and to try new things? The other side of it is necessity is the mother of invention. And I guess those early initiatives we've heard so much about all the successes that we've had out there. I mean, I guess it's like, maybe just trying to shift it back to the positive. There are things going on. We've got this event that's happening at the beginning of July where, there is a chance as well to develop some of these ideas a bit more. So, is there a positive side to that? We've heard, I suppose, about how we've diversified, how we've reached new people, come up with new ideas. So, there is a kind of light at the end of the tunnel. Margot, you've got a point.
Yeah, because I know that we said about, galas being very useful, but also they're quite elitist, and I agree with that. And I can't remember who said it now, but about, people come, especially for their gala, because that's the only context where they can have some conversations and exchange, views and throw big cash at the cause, whatever. But it's kind of like that conversation is like more important, or like needs a special kind of place to happen. But I bet you if you live streamed, or if you invited the big donors into like artists backstage chat, or when they rehearse a play or whatever, the stuff that goes on there, none of the conversations the big donors are having are going to be as entertaining and stuff. And I wonder whether we could do like some kind of donor love island or something.
Okay.
As a way of...
Could you bring the donors into some kind of reality TV broadcast nightmare? That's Margot's idea. But I'm going to take it. I think it was Justine that said we're giving the donors this kind of exclusive experience, and maybe there's a way to reframe that experience in something that's a bit different to a gala dinner, but at the same time is pushing the same buttons for them. Anyway, let's get some final thoughts. Also, it's probably worth putting it out there. I can't remember who's monitoring the Twitter and the Facebook. If there's any comments from there, now's the time to bring them in before we shut this down. But is there any final thoughts from anybody? What are your feelings about this? Do people feel like that they have heard some new ideas, or do people feel like the thinking is still to be done? Let's get some final thoughts. Anyone want to kick us off with the final thoughts? Anything now on the? Are you doing the Twitter, Kane? Is there anything on the Twitter? No.
Nothing on the Twitter. Margot, what about on the Facebook? Anything on the Facebook?
On Facebook, I'm just going to give a shout out to Vesna, who wasn't able to join us on Zoom, but she's been watching. But she's just saying, loved everything, so no comments. But we have had, we have had a good number of people watching throughout today. So hopefully, whenever the next event is, I'm sure they'll be joining.
Maybe then we've just got time to do another quick poll then, see if people feel positive or negative or on the fence about the kind of, the fundraising landscape for the cultural sector. Do you feel more positive, more negative, or about the same, or sitting on the fence and not sure? Can we do another? Should we do another poll?
Yeah.
Let's do another poll. So yeah, hopefully you've still got your backgrounds. So if you're more positive, go green. If you're less positive, if you're negative about it, in fact, go red. If you're not sure, go yellow. And we'll just get a sense of where people are at. So we've got all yellows. We've got a bit of green from Camilla, but we've already heard that she's almost pathologically upbeat about this. I'm feeling positive about it. We've got like a still photograph of David. I'm not sure. That's more pink. It's mostly yellow, so we're not sure. We're still sitting on the fence.
I love Wes's contribution there as well. It's very eloquent.
Really good, Wes.
How many ordnance survey maps do you have to hand, Wes?
And do you have any green ones?
I want to see like a
No,
whole
he does.
rainbow.
Turning into a tour of Wes's survey collection. Here we go. So you've got all the
Well done.
Wes, could you do? I mean, you could do a fundraising event to do with ordnance survey maps. I've not really thought it through.
Absolutely.
ideas, and Emily's yellow has turned to green because we just saw the green of the plant.
And I wanted to give a shout out to Justine's, I don't know, sleeve, like the neck sleeve that came off now, so you won't see it. And to Emily's plant, I don't know if it's got a name, but no names.
Anyway, so it's now just time. I'm feeling like there's mostly sitting on the fence, but there's a few positive voices out there. Does anyone want to give a final thought to this session? Where do we go next? I think is a really important question as well. Anyone want to throw something in at the end here? Kane?
I guess I'm sitting on the fence about whether it's, the future's positive or negative, but I do think the great thing about the arts is that, the creative sector is we're really, really, really good at innovating. And I think it's really important that we don't become blockbusters, hence the ban. Yeah. And that, I do genuinely think like people are trying out new things. People are thinking of like how the digital world meets the physical world in really interesting ways. People are challenging and testing, do we need to use Zoom? And I think there'll be really exciting things coming out of it, particularly Dan's moving virtual background, which I've still not been able to do.
Yeah. Okay, is that a swan you've got in the background there?
It's a spoonbill actually.
Oh, a spoon.
There you go.
What? Okay, I'm not familiar with that particular bird, but I think what we're seeing is innovation literally happening as we speak, and I think to me that gives a positive spin on things, because I think we can innovate and we can do things, and in a way we have to take risks even if we don't have the time or the money to do that. We've got no other choice really, but I think in the end those things will actually pan out and they will work. So I guess it's time just to say thanks to everybody, and let's have a big round of applause to everybody. Thanks for taking part, and maybe it's time to do our comedy Zoom waving. One final point.
I would just like to invite everybody to our next event, which is Aberfeldy Live, which is a Talkaoke, which is combining, actually speaking of experiments, it's combining offline and online approach, and it is an event that we run from our studio, combining online audience and people on the street. So that's Aberfeldy Live.
Distance, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
Goes without saying, we don't want any COVID situation going on there. So that's Aberfeldy Live on Thursday 25th. You can find out about it from our social media. And then in July, the 7th of July, this may be a bit more relevant to you guys. It's an event with Rich Mix, and it is about connecting the arts and cultural sector with communities. Just to kind of extend and broaden some of the conversations maybe that we had here today, or maybe start some new ones. So that's on 7th of July. But you're really invited to both of these. And Kane has been doing Twitter today, so if you follow Institute of Fundraising and Raise as well on Twitter, you'll see all the top points. And if you go to Facebook, follow the People Speak, all the main points are there as well. So share it with others, and yeah, that's it.
Okay, great stuff.
And in terms of notices, just that there will be another Cultural Sector Network raise Talkaoke event in July. We need to work out a time and a date for when that will happen, but watch the emails and social media to find out when that's going to be.
And we'll probably try and get a bit better actually getting these events organised with a lot more notice next time.
Yeah, we may even work out when the August one will be too.
You might try and schedule them so they're closer to when the Raise event is, or at least promoted at the same time as that.
That is the hope and the dream. But I would also like to say we're overrunning a little bit, but I just want to say, first of all, thanks to Rick for the visuals that you're seeing behind me here. But also, I just wanted to say as well, if you want to input into, what some of those provocations could be for the next sessions, do feel free to, pass those on, because it's all about you and it's about your ideas and how we work through this together. But in the meantime, I just want to say thanks to everyone. Thanks for a great session. I really enjoyed it. If you want to. I'm not trying to promote alcohol here, but it's been lovely to see you all, and thanks everyone for taking part.
Thank you to the Institute of Fundraising, Arts Council and Raise. Goodbye.